In this lesson, I'm going to introduce you to gradients and how to make your own gradient. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to use gradients, layer styles, and blends together. So in this, I need to reset this. That's from a former lesson. I'm going to click that tiny little arrow right here and go to this gear and say oops, that's the load gradients. I'm going to go reset gradients. And I'm going to say okay. Usually I append, and I'll tell you why in a minute. That's okay. That's the default gradients when you first load Photoshop that you're going to have. Now I'm going to go to the foreground background. That's the one that's first. Now if my foreground was a different color, you'll see that that changes. So the first gradient always represents the foreground color in the background. The second gradient always represents the foreground to nothing, and the third is black and white. I'm going to change the foreground background to black. See how that changed up here, this preview window? And I'm just going to show you a gradient. It's a rubber band line, and I'm holding down the mouse button. The longer the line, the direction and the length of the line determine the kind of, we're doing a linear gradient right now. See, I did a diagonal linear gradient, very long, very smooth gradient. Let's say I'm going to do a vertical gradient or horizontal gradient, short line, shorter line. And then I'm going to do a vertical gradient, longer line, shorter line, longer line. If you want it perfectly straight, you hold the shift key. Perfectly straight, shift key, shift key. You can almost, see, look at that. The tighter the gradient, and it always blows out the one underneath it. The difference between that and the one to nothing, I'm going to change this to red, just so we have something to okay, there we go. So we've got that red gradient. Now let's say I want to go back to black and white. I hit the default color chips, go up here and pick this one, which is black to nothing. And now notice you can see through. I can build up. And you can also build up this one. The others you actually either do it or you don't do it, but this one you build up to. I am going to show you how to load gradients. This is where the existing libraries are. You can make your own. You can replace the gradients. I'm just going to add color harmonies. That means I want to append. And maybe I'll do color harmonies too also and append. So I have some choices here. I'm going to pick this gradient. I'm going to change to radial gradient. I'm going to change to this angle gradient. This is I forget what this is called. Let's see, hover over, reflected gradient, which I've hardly ever used. Some people might. And this is the star gradient. So you can do it in different ways, and that's kind of cool. So you've got all these different shapes. I probably use linear and radial more than I use any of the others. You can change the blend modes, but we're going to do a different lesson for that because I want to show you how to make your own gradient. So I click on I'm going to do that again just one more time. I click here for that. I clicked on the arrow for this. I click on it on the preview color for this. So we're going to make our own gradient. Here are these little color pots, and I'm going to click here, and there's the color, and I'm going to change it to a bright yellow kind of chartreuse color. Okay, I'm going to change this to a cyan. Here we go, cyan, bright cyan. Okay, So now I've got this new custom gradient. Let's say I want one more color. Hold the Option key or the Alt key if you're on a PC, and then you can make another color pot. You can either click here or the color pot, and I'm going to add a pink. There we go. Now if you notice these little triangular things, that's the amount of the color. Like if I want a lot of blue and just a little pink in this ramp, then I move this closer. I don't want this color. It's ugly. So very easy to get rid of. Click and drag. Gone. Now these, you might ask, are what? These are opacity. I'm going to hold the Option key or the Alt key on a PC. And let's say I want some transparency in the center. Well, this, since it's an opacity slider, I'm going to change the opacity. So notice, and you'll notice some of the pre-existing ones have opacity changes. You can add opacity sliders, you can change the amount again, and that's how you make your own gradient. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to call it KJ, and I'm going to say new, and there's my new gradient. I'm going to click OK. And there it is, my beautiful new gradient. Hover over it, KJ, and I'm going to make yet a new layer and do Karen's gradient, and then turn on this one, or turn on this one, and you see it doesn't have a lot, I guess, of transparency, but it does make it look pretty solid. But there's my gradient to transparent. I can go up here and say, let's say I made all those gradients. Save gradients. I'm going to call it KJ. I already did one here, so it'll probably ask me if I want to replace it. Yeah, go ahead and replace it. And then if I get rid of all these gradients and reset my gradients, just say OK. That's still in the buffer, but now load my gradients. Let's see, let's pick this so we can see. Load gradients. Find KJ on the desktop somewhere, on this very crowded desktop. There it is. KJ.grd. Open. Those were all the ones we had loaded. And here is my custom gradient.